people that work with wonderful organizations that are in the fight against human trafficking, and they do a great job in their specific area in that fight. So I want to answer some questions really quick and just give you some information, and then we'll make our way out. So give me just a few minutes. I want to start off with introducing each one. We'll start off with Miss Lisa Arnold, our producer and director. And then we've got Blake and Missy McCall with Blue Heart International. And if y'all would just tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we have a few safe houses between us and our partner organization for girls who are rescued out of sex trafficking. So they come, there's one safe house and then one long-term care, which they stay for about a year to 2 years. And then they transition into a home where it's really to get them back on their feet and into living a self-sustaining life. We also spread a lot of awareness by reaching out to people, like doing these movie screenings and just speaking to people about what happens in our communities.
Next, we've got Mr. Bob Rogers with Street Grace.
Street Grace is a local organization here in Atlanta that was birthed out of the faith community. We work with about 70 or 100 different churches, primarily focusing on the domestic minor sex trafficking, so 18 and under. And we do it from an awareness standpoint, focusing on ending the demand in all of our programs that we do. That's the common theme that works through.
Next, we've got Nicole and Kristen with Rescuing Hope.
The Rescuing Hope really focuses a lot on awareness. So we'll do events like this. We'll also go to other speaking engagements at other churches and conferences. We also like to connect our survivors with different organizations and resources, all the while connecting advocates and other people to see what they can do to help.
Next, we've got Jess Roth with Out of Darkness.
Hi, Out of Darkness is an Atlanta-based organization whose mission is to reach, rescue, and restore women who have been sexually exploited in Atlanta and the areas around there. And we do that through, we have a Georgia hotline that you can call, rescue teams, and then currently 2 safe houses in which we can house women and then help them transition into a long-term program.
And next we have Kit Cummings with Power of Peace Project.
Yeah, we work in prisons and schools in different places around the country and overseas. And we'll go in and try to teach kids, like on our universities and our high schools, helping young men to learn how to not just look out for the women, but also look out especially for the weaker young men, young women that might be in trouble. And we teach them how to be peacemakers. We also work with the women to learn how to be respected and expect to be protected by our young men. And so it's a movement spreading called Power Peace Project. Grateful to be here.
Thank y'all. So I just want to go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to ask Blake first. Different types of human trafficking. When we say human trafficking, what does that mean?
Yeah, there's a variety of different types of human trafficking. Anytime it implies the movement of people. So you have sex trafficking, which is more of what you saw today, which there's a variety of ways that happens. This is one of many ways that sex trafficking happens in the communities. Another one is labor trafficking, which we see more, I think, in California because of all the farms and the ranches and everything, where people from Mexico are coming over the border and they're being worked long hours and underpaid. You also see a lot of sales groups, traveling sales groups, where they're promised an opportunity of money and all these other things that never really comes to fruition. So those are just a few of the ways that people are trafficked. So.
Next one is, why is specifically sex trafficking such a big issue? And Bob, if you can answer that one, why specifically sex trafficking?
I think number one, it's the prevalence of it. If you just look at the numbers alone, and you know that 1 out of every 4 females is sexually exploited by the time she's 18. 1 out of every 6 boys is sexually exploited by the time he's 18. And there's a fairly close to a 50-50 mix on that. So you say 1 out of every 5 minors of our kids in our communities, our neighborhoods, our families, and our churches is sexually exploited. It's something that touches all of us. Just to give a perspective, A couple of years ago, you probably heard a lot about the Ebola virus. There were 8 cases of that in the U.S. You've heard a lot about the Zika virus lately. There are less than 4,000 cases of that in the U.S. There's probably 60 or 65 million or more people under the age of 18 living in the United States. If 1 out of every 5 of them is sexually exploited by the time of 18, they're 18, that's 12 to 15 million people. This is a subject that is in epidemic proportions, and it's not being talked about except in events like this through movies and awareness.
Thank you. Wow. Okay, next one, and this is kind of a, from Blake, I want to direct this to you. How does the pornography industry, how does that fuel this sex trafficking?
Well, what I was shocked to find out is that the average age that a child is first introduced to pornography is 8 years old. And so that's not just through movies, that's not just through internet, that's through publications, a little bit of everything. And so what happens is our boys are seeing things, and one thing leads to another. The way that the mind works is they see one thing, and then eventually they see another, and it has to continually get a little bit worse and a little bit worse, because what they're looking at becomes kind of boring to them, and it becomes an addiction, and it messes with their mind. And then eventually as they get older, because they're used to seeing those things, they want to start acting those things out. And so what happens is when you have a world where women and their kids are being built up to think of women in a degrading way, like this is a normal thing to happen for women, our children's minds start to develop that way. So we need to really be, we're parents of 3 girls. And so I know for us it's a big deal that even the boys that we are able to help, nephews and things like that, that we try to protect our children from seeing these things. Because if they're seeing those things, it becomes a trigger in their mind of something that they tend to think that because it becomes okay as they see those things more and more and more. So we need to be careful and make sure that everything our kids are doing, we need to watch out for. One of the ways you can do that is we have a publication out there, a little flyer that if your kids are 13, 14, 15 and they have cell phones, there are apps that they can hide on their phone that you as a parent cannot see because the app is created to hide behind their calculator. So just like you log on to your phone with a 4-digit code, kids can actually hide an app behind their calculator where they type in a certain code into the calculator, and then that app all of a sudden can appear. So these are things as parents that we need to be aware of so that kids aren't able to hide these things, and kids don't be getting any ideas now that you know this either. But so be aware. Grab that flyer on your way out. If you're a parent, everybody has a kid or knows someone who has a kid. So make sure you grab that flyer so you guys can take a look at those apps. Because those apps are also the ones that pedophiles are using to reach children in our communities as well. So.
And just to make sure for anyone who's Russian, real quick, на ваших детей на ихний телефон, где у них калькулятор, где они могут математику делать, они могут код поставить, и будет смотреться, как это нормально, ничего там нету, а когда они код ставят, что-то другое показывает, там, где, может быть, фотографии какие-то, которые нехорошие, то вы не увидите, если вы не поставите код. То если вы хотите просто проверить, просто объяснить, потому что через вот этот app люди, мужчины могут им написать на сообщение, если вы хотите встретиться, давай я тебя увижу, мы познакомимся, вот как они их найдут. So that way, kids, if you think your parents didn't understand, we covered that one. But it's true, that is the easiest way to get in because it's an app. I don't even know half the time, but it's hidden unless you type in a certain code. So keep that in mind. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't even know that. Nikki, common misconceptions, even for myself. What are the common misconceptions about sex trafficking?
A couple would be that people in the United States often think that sex trafficking has to do with immigrants or foreigners like Europe, Asia, and that's just not true. Plenty of these girls and boys are right here in your own neighborhood, in your own town. Every single state has victims of this crime. I'm sorry, this keeps going. Sorry. There is also the misconception that victims tend to self-identify themselves, and that's not really true. They kind of conceive that almost as a weakness to call themselves a victim of this crime. And they don't really like to portray themselves that way either. And also the one where people will see pictures of the children or the girls or the boys bound and taped. Most times it's a psychological thing that keeps these kids there. So that'll be a few different ones for you.
And the next one, I wanted to, Lisa, to kind of switch it over about this movie. Tell us why, how, true story, not, how did this come to be?
Yeah. Cage No More is based on a compilation of stories. The actual writer of the novel had worked with a couple of organizations, A21, which is Christine Cain's organization, and Trafficking Hope, which is an organization out of Louisiana that's now nationwide as well. And so she wrote this movie, and it was given to me because I do movies that somehow encourage, inspire, make a difference in the world. So I'm big on social justice, and I'm big on God. So if I can combine those two things and get the church to come to life and do something about things, then that's my lane. So when she told me this, I was so appalled about how prevalent it was, because like many of you, I thought it was a third world country offense. I had no idea that it was happening in the U.S. And so this was something that I could use the gifts and talents that God has given me to make a difference. But I want to encourage all of you. There is some way that you can make a difference in this fight. You know, if you're a school teacher, then get your principal to start talking about this at your schools. Get education programs. Get some of these speakers into your schools so you can start addressing it. If you're a mom or a dad or a grandparent, have these conversations with your kids, because you need to understand that in the U.S., the ages that are at risk are not 18 and 21-year-olds. Yes, they are, but the greatest risk is 11 to 14-year-olds for girls, and 10 to 13-year-olds for boys. So we have to have those conversations at home. That's what it means. So we've got to start talking about this. If you're a businessman in this community, you have resources that you can give to these organizations. You have ways that you can help and walk alongside them so that they can not only do the rescues, but the restoration, which take years. You're talking about a victim has to be, physically rehabilitated and emotionally and spiritually. So there's so much that needs to go into that. We all have influence through social media these days. We're all on Facebook and every other kind of app there is. Use that. Put out some quotes every 30 seconds. A child, or a person becomes a victim of human trafficking. So talk about it on social media. So think about it, pray about it. How can I make a difference? And make sure that you're doing something in this fight as well.
And I really I mentioned this yesterday as well, but that she mentioned her skills. So each one of us, completely different walks of life, age range, job type, and it's just whatever God has blessed you with. I mean, even if it's, like you said, teacher or cooking, something. These organizations will use you in whichever talent you have. They will put you to work. So it's so important just to use what you got. Use your two hands, and they'll put you to work, take care of the rest. So I love that. I love that you used your movie-making abilities, which are fantastic, to, as your talent to kind of contribute to this. So I love that. And just real quick, we're halfway there. If anyone in the audience has a question, please let Thama know. She has a piece of paper. It'll be anonymous. Let her know. She'll write it down, and we'll answer it as well that the panel can answer. So please feel free to. Missy, this one is a little bit personal because it's the mom part of it. How do kids get coerced into sex trafficking?
What we're seeing a lot of right now is through social media, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. These pimps are finding these girls that are looking for self-worth and value. They're trying to find their identity. And so a lot of it they find on social media and Instagram. And so they have these pimps that are after them that are saying, oh, I like your photo. Or they try to say, hey, you're so beautiful, we should meet up and date. And they meet at a coffee shop. And so that slow conversation turns into them becoming their boyfriend, which then turns into, like we need, they sell them on this fantasy of like either they're a rapper is what I'm really seeing right now, or that, they're going to have this amazing lifestyle together, and they try to really get them away from their parents and sell them like they're not good for you. They don't know what's good for you. Like, I know what's good for you. So right now we're seeing a lot of this social media aspect of it, and then another way that they get coerced into it, I would say, they just don't know. Kids just don't know. I had a case at the mall where a girl met another girl, and she was 19 years old, and this other girl was 17 years old, and it just starts as a simple conversation of, I like your shoes. And they became friends, and she was actually a pimp. And the girl had no clue because she's just a friend. And then what ended up happening is they started talking, they sent each other text messages, let's hang out, and then one thing led to the next. The pimp picked her up, a guy picked her up with a girl, drugged her, and the next thing we know, we found her being sold on the streets in Sacramento. So there's a bunch of different ways, but I would just say the biggest thing is that kids just don't know. And between 11 and 12 and 13 years old, you don't think that there's pimps out there looking for your girls, but they are. They look at them as dollar signs. They don't see them as little girls like we do.
And even though the girl she's talking about, usually the pimps are looking for the vulnerable, the ones that want that appreciation. But you can understand that this girl and her parents, they were doing everything right. Those parents were loving on that girl, were pouring everything into her. They had a great relationship. That daughter didn't need anything. She was just trying to be nice and polite to that girl and had no clue what that girl was about. So I want you to understand, it's not just if your child is vulnerable. This can happen to any child, and that's why the conversation needs to happen.
And Lisa's favorite, stranger danger.
Yeah, you remember that. Like, we don't get in a car with somebody you don't know and all this stranger danger. Well, that really is the conversation you can use for this. And the best tip that I've ever gotten from an organization is that if you can just teach your child not to be rude, but when a stranger approaches them, because they usually approach with a compliment. So when a stranger approaches them, just look them straight in the eye, say thank you, and walk away. Do not engage. They won't go after her. They won't go after your son or your daughter because they are looking for the vulnerable. So just don't engage with them. Say thank you, walk away. Best tip I've ever heard.
One of the things I remember my parents doing when I was young was every time I had a friend who I would want to go over to their house because they invited me over, my parents made a point of not only meeting that child, but wanting to meet the parents as well. And so I think that's something that could protect a lot of children. If parents, you just took that extra step of every time your children wanted to go somewhere, hang out with someone, whether they're 17 or whether they're 12, go over and make a point of meeting their parents and understanding what your child's going to be getting into while they're over there. So.
And parents, trust your instincts. We had one lady that came and saw this movie in Louisiana, and she just had a gut check. And she immediately went home, got on her daughter's computer, found out that a conversation had been started and a bus ticket had been purchased, and her daughter was about to be taken. So trust your instincts.
Wow. And I want to put Kristen kind of in the hot seat. Will you kind of help me? Because even my misconception when you say pimp, and I think you said this yesterday, is like the purple velvet hat, the cane. But what does that mean? Because when she says girl, it's not just a man. It can be. So what does pimp mean?
Yeah, so a lot of times, just like you're saying, when we think of pimp, we really do have that sort of idea of this is someone who's in the movies that we've seen with the purple hat and the cane. But a trafficker can be a girl, it can be a woman, it can be a couple. We've seen that as well. And really using the language, the verbiage between trafficker and pimp, they're technically the same thing, but a pimp almost implies that there's safety there, that they're going to take care of the child. That's not the case. Of course, they're out there to harm them. So I like to keep that in mind as well. But really, a trafficker looks like anybody in this room. It could be, really, it's not someone who's going to be, lurking in the shadows, and maybe, but it could also be, we've had people who have been trafficked by someone they just went to a sleepover with, for their middle school. So it can truly be anybody.
And isn't it true that, or don't they believe that at least half of all victims know their perpetrator or know someone attached to the perpetrator?
Yeah, that's true. We really do talk a lot about stranger danger, and that is really, really key. But at the same time, there's so many statistics about if you are going to be exploited, a lot of times it is someone that you know or who's really close to you, someone that you're going to trust. So, like you were saying earlier about the grooming, it's really important for parents to meet the other parents and to meet the children, but to also keep an ongoing conversation because it could really turn into something different.
I wanted to ask, in the U.S. specifically, Bob, how many people are trafficked a year in the U.S.?
We focus primarily on minors. On the adult side, there are estimates all over the place, hundreds and hundreds of thousands or beyond. But there are probably somewhere between, most estimates say between 100 and 300,000 minors in the U.S. are trafficked every year.
That's just minors, right?
Just minors, below the age of 18.
Wow. Okay. Ooh, this is going to be kind of a multiple question. So let's start off with Kristen. When we say victim, when we say human trafficking, what are some of the signs? What can we look for?
Yeah, so depending on the situation, there can be lots of different indicators. I've seen different kinds of things depending on where I'm at a lot of times, but they won't really make eye contact usually. If you go into the verbiage, and I know that Shared Hope has a really great dictionary for this, and it's on our website as well, but there's something called out of pocket. And out of pocket is when a girl makes eye contact with someone who's not her trafficker. She knows out on the street that she can be taken then by the new trafficker. So even when she's out in public, a lot of times she's not going to make eye contact, even if it's with someone who doesn't probably mean her any harm, but she might, not really want to show what's going on as well. Also, they're not really in charge of their money, or if there is, there's someone who's nearby making sure they're not alone by themselves. A lot of times they might be with an older man. I've actually even seen a girl who had her trafficker out in the parking lot, and he was blowing up her phone, but he was also sending in girls constantly to check on her and would not let her leave. And he knew that I was putting makeup on her because she was beaten up. But so he wanted her to do that so she could go back out. But it was one of those things where he's like, I can't leave you there. Even though I know where you are, I have to have someone watch you every single second. So that's a good one. If it's someone who could be out of the country, or like we said, most people are from the U.S. that are here, but it could be that they don't have access to their documents, so that's something as well. They won't self-identify as a victim the majority of the time, so you just kind of have to see if something seems like they're up. And when I was talking about earlier, as far as not having someone or having someone with them consistently, it might not be someone that you can see. I've also seen girls who were at gas stations and they were just positioned in such a way that you could tell that someone was watching them, and they could be as far as the next McDonald's, but as long as they have eye contact and they know that they've got that girl, they can go run after them if they need to. So those are some indicators that I typically look for.
And then let's say, okay, you see this sign. What can you do from there? Blake, what can you do once that happens?
And you'll have to help me with the texting part, but I typically look up the National Trafficking Hotline, or you can text the keyword, be free, right? So I think, is that the number on your hand right now?
Yes, I have it memorized. I was worried I was going to get nervous. So if everyone can take out their phone actually right now, I'm giving you permission. I actually have the national hotline number. There is a Georgia hotline number by Out of Darkness, and they're awesome as well. But something that's good about having this number, although I do encourage you to get the Georgia hotline number, is that a lot of times girls move from state to state. Their traffickers are constantly moving them, so they don't know where they are, and so that someone can't come get them easily. So this is a great hotline number because they can just locate the nearest resource, and they do contact police as well. But the number is 1-888-373-7888. And again, that's 1-888-373-7888, and that's put on by Polaris.
Thank you. So, okay, we saw signs, we saw what we can do. Kit, what about before it happens? What's something we can do to prevent it versus intervention?
That's good. The interesting way I got involved in the panel is I'm doing some work in Tijuana, Mexico right now, in a prison down there, and as well in the communities with the kids that are caught in the crossfire of the cartels. In Tijuana right now, and you won't see this on the news, there's a wave of kidnappings going on with little girls, and they're 14 to 21 right now that are getting snatched, and the cartels don't even know who's doing it. Because we're having to work in areas where the cartels have provided protection for us to be able to work with these kids and try to keep them off the streets and get them involved in sports and really just stay alive and not, taken by the gangs into prostitution or drug sales. And this was just 2 weeks ago, and we did a march, a youth rally down through this very impoverished but beautiful part of Tijuana, and then had a big party on the field, and it was right in the middle of where all the cartels are at war over this area, but all of them have agreed to protect the children in this area. Well, those children started getting plucked, and the reason I wanted to share this is I want us all to understand the power of the enemy and not to be naive, because down there, the cartels are actually coming together to try to figure out how do we keep our girls from getting snatched. And when the cartels don't know who are stealing their kids, then it's almost like the devil himself, because they're operating so powerfully and discreetly in one of the most dangerous areas of the world. $10 billion a year is motivating them to get very, very sophisticated. And so these are the experts. I'm seeing the enemy up close and personal, but they are very motivated, very patient, very well funded, and they got nothing but time and money to figure out new ways to get our children. And so what do? In Tijuana, what we're doing right now is we're having little boys stand on corners in the area where they're getting taken, and they're being spotters. We're also teaching little boys to walk all the little girls home. So whenever you see a girl by herself in Tijuana, you go and give her a ride or a walk home so she's not vulnerable. So what we're doing in colleges and high schools here in America is we're teaching our young men and women that if you see a girl at a party that's had too much to drink, you go over and kind of take care of her, make sure that she's vulnerable right now. If you see a girl at school that's being picked on or cyberbullied, we're teaching how do you handle that? How do you defend one another, protect one another? But I think just lastly on the question is, what can we do? I spoke at a human traffic conference several years ago in Nashville, Tennessee, and they were up there telling the changes that are made in a female girl at adolescence when the father is not connected to that daughter. And from physical changes to emotional, and the risks go through the roof. Whether everything that you don't want to happen to your kids happens at a much greater level when dad is not connected to the kids, especially the daughters. And so, fathers, I know how much we love our kids, but sometimes we can be naive as to the things that they are actually being tempted with and don't even know it. But this thing that we're battling is a beast, and they're not playing around. They're very, very motivated at what they do. And so I'm asking churches and schools and all of us to be more motivated than they are to protect our kids, but it's got to start with the parents having those talks.
And I think it's important to understand one of the reasons why human trafficking is becoming such a major issue. And you look at places where drug trafficking is the largest crime in the United States, but human trafficking is the fastest growing. And the reason for that is gangs and all these different groups and drug dealers are realizing that it's a lot harder for them to get convicted for selling a human than it is drugs. Because if you get caught with drugs in your car, you're automatically in trouble. If you get caught with a human being in your car, how do you prove that they're doing anything wrong? These girls are trained by the pimps, and a lot of times they haven't had a role model in their life to teach them that law enforcement may be here to help you. They're taught by their mom and dad that law enforcement could be pretty bad out there. And so they don't trust law enforcement when they're coming up. And so they don't understand that I can tell this person to help me and they may be able to get help. So the other reason is drug dealers are realizing that when you sell drugs, the drug's gone. You have to buy more drugs to sell more drugs. When you have a human, the human comes back. and you get to sell that person over and over and over again. And so they're able to make more money by doing it as well.
Okay. All right. For the next one, I'm going to kind of skip a few because I want to get to the part what we can do in each spot. But Jess, real quick, when we say human trafficking and who it affects, I guess, and again, because I want to kind of get that point across, is who does it affect and who does it affect the most?
I would say, as you've heard from everybody here, is that it affects everyone. There's no certain socioeconomic group, any ethnic group. It affects every single person. And in working in the safe house, I was able to see that there were girls who had not finished middle school that were caught in trafficking, but then there were also girls who had had a full ride scholarship to college, and they had gotten caught in that as well. There have been people who are from very wealthy families, people that are from very poor families. It kind of just runs the gamut of there's no one stereotypical, this is what somebody looks like.
Yeah, one of our executive producers for Cage No More, his daughter was targeted in Destin, Florida while the family was on vacation. She was 12 years old. They had to call in the FBI. That family has, they're loaded and they love on their children like nobody else. And this was while they were on vacation, so they were enjoying themselves and not even thinking that this could happen. So please be aware.
And then this next one is a little bit personal, but I want to kind of share this part for sure, Nikki, for victims. When we think of victims and what it takes for them to overcome, what's the hardest thing for them to overcome once they're out?
As a survivor myself who went through multiple years of child sex trafficking, I would say reintegration and restoration is probably the hardest thing. Most girls and guys have been so repressed that their individuality has just disappeared. They've become what the pimp or the trafficker has wanted them to be. And that's just really unfortunate. So they have to relearn who they are again. So that takes time, it takes a lot of effort, and that journey is extremely difficult. A lot of people think that when they're rescued, everything is good and they're happy that they're away, and they may be happy, but that's really when all the pieces fall and they have to learn how to pick it all up again and live their life somewhat normally, and they have no idea how to do that. So we have to reteach them how to do all of this again, and we just have to love them. You never push them too hard. You let them kind of guide where you go, and unfortunately, if you push too hard because you love them so much and you want them to get better and you want them to reintegrate back into society in a normal way, you're going to want to push some things that you remember from them before. You're going to think that they are the same person, and they're not. And you need to remember this, because if you push too hard, you're no better than the trafficker that they got away from.
And I think one of the things that I really liked that I think, Missy, you mentioned yesterday is the restorative part. It takes a long time and a lot of patience. Wrap it all up in love times two, a lot.
A lot of times, like, the misconception is, like she was saying, is we had twins, and they had 9 children together, and they both were pregnant again, and so they all had kids under the age of 5, and they lived with cockroaches, and they had mold growing in their shower, a terrible situation for these 9 children, and in this little tiny motel. And so we helped them get out of the motel because they wanted help, and we put them in this beautiful hotel, 2 bedrooms, kind of like a Westin hotel in Atlanta. And it was a gorgeous hotel, but by the end, when we were right about to move them, they said, I don't want help. And a lot of time the misconception is, like, we're rescuing them, but they gotta be ready. They gotta want it themselves. And you gotta just love on them and say, you know what? I'm here for you when you're ready. And just be okay with that. Even if they steal from you, cheat from you, whatever, just know that it's not them, it's what they're going through. And just know that it's a living, breathing process. It's a constant, them coming back, them going in, coming back and going in, and that just hopefully this one time it will stick. but just know that it's nothing against you. It's just a living, breathing process of the restoration.
And remember that these girls, yeah, they left, but you have to remember, most people would consider these girls a prostitute, right? These girls weren't born with the goal of being a prostitute one day. They went through a lot of trauma in their life, one thing that led to another that led them into this life. And so they don't understand a different life. They don't understand that two strangers or anybody on this panel truly, truly cares for them and wants to help get them out of the life that they're living in into a better situation. That's hard for them to fathom, that there are actually people out there that are truly going to care for them, because their own parents didn't even care for them. So why would two strangers want to help me? So it takes time to build that trust and to say, hey, even though you're not ready right now, we're here when you're ready, and we'll continue to help you when you're ready to get that help. So.
And when we say time, it took me 9 years. I'm going to be 29 on Halloween, and it took me 9 years to get on the flip side of this. And that was actively chasing my restoration. It took a long time, and it took a lot of support and a lot of loved ones and friends and resources. And we just have to be there for these girls and these boys constantly.
Sorry, I know we got to be quick, but there's a girl in our area that literally every organization in town knows who she is, because every organization has reached her at one point in a time. She actually shares a last name with us, and so we feel like it's destiny that we're going to help her one day. But she went from a children's home in the area, and eventually came to our program with the 18 to 24 age group, and she's been in and out multiple times. Missy had to help her when she was beaten up by a John so badly she needed surgery in her eye, and she had to take her to the hospital and stuff. But it takes a lot of time, like she's saying. So.
And I want to real quick, this is the audience questions. I got 3. One of them is going to be the last one that each one will answer. How can you get involved? And they'll kind of tell one thing that's coming up, or some way that they need people, or really anything that you can do. So that one will be answered at the end. And I want to turn this to Bob, this question. Do you come across any cases where U.S. law enforcement and government officials are assisting pimps in covering up trafficking operations in the U.S.? I'm putting you in the hot seat. I apologize.
Thank you for that question. Let me answer it this way, because it is true and it is honest. I'm sure there's something somewhere, but do we have a pattern of that? Have we run across it in the state of Georgia and Tennessee, where we're most active? The answer is no. Law enforcement has been excellent. Their support, their involvement the last 2 or 3 years, especially the way they're bringing not-for-profit organizations into the process of recovery and the restorative cares and connecting us with the survivors and the victims of the trafficking, they've been absolutely fantastic. And that's both at a state and at a federal level.
Thank you. And then this last one, for anyone who feels they can answer, this one is, what's the best way for parents to prevent their teens from acquiring friendship or relationships with people that can harm them? Should the kids not make new friends, or should parents control who they talk to, even with kids their same age?
I think with that question, with my daughters, I have 3 little girls, it's just creating boundaries, letting them know their boundaries at a very young age. My daughter's 7 years old, and at the age of 4, I started speaking to her about her body, letting her know that it's her private parts, everything's her private area. Mommy's not allowed to touch you. Daddy's not allowed to touch you. Not a stranger's allowed to touch you. And if anyone makes you feel uncomfortable, let me know. And just having that constant conversation with them and letting them know, if you ever feel comfortable, come tell mommy and daddy. If you ever feel like anything's wrong, come tell mommy and daddy. Let them know. I think the best advice I ever heard from anyone, it was from a lawyer, and he said, the only person you can trust in this world is yourself, because that's going to be your best friend in this world, and it's going to be the only person that you can rely on. And it's the truth, because every person in your life will probably fail you. But if you can love yourself and truly love who you are, and know that whatever happens to me in life, I know who I am, and just have that open conversation with your children about their friends. And, when my child gets bullied at school, I say, well, is that really who you are? And have them answer the question, don't answer it for them, so it reinforces who they are, because they're identifying with who they are, who they feel like they are inside.
Thank you. And then this is the last question. We'll start with Kit, kind of work our way down. What can we do to get involved specifically in your organization, what you do?
Yeah, and was I told that I was in the Ukraine not too long ago, so I think there's some people here
Yes.
that
Yes,
is
that-
beautiful.
yep.
I loved it. Got to do some work there, so not sure who it is out there. Beautiful. I wish I remembered a word to say. But if you have kids that are in high schools and middle schools in this area around Atlanta, we are the Power of Peace Project. If you look it up, we are looking for opportunities to get into schools, and we've found that the bigger a kid's dream is, the smaller the temptation for things that are going to get in the way of that dream. I think our kids get in trouble when they're just bored. You know, they're bored, they're stressed out, they're worried, and then they have all these other things to take all their focus and concentration away. So we try to help kids get big dreams and then put them on a pathway to those dreams, and then then they're a lot smarter when they have a big why, and they don't want to lose the thing that they love. And so that's what I did with my daughter. That's what we do with our programs. But just invite us, the Power Peace Project. Ask your school, have us in. Doesn't cost them anything. We'll come in and work with the kids.
I work with Out of Darkness, and there are many different ways that you can be involved. Like Tatiana was saying, whatever talent and gift the Lord has given you, you can use that to make a difference. As an example, we have a group of ladies that likes to make meals for the Safe House. One of them, her husband is ill, and she can't leave the house a lot, so she can cook. And one of the things she made was homemade chocolate chip cookies. Well, at the Safe House each night, we have a heart talk and we debrief the day. And one of the girls was brought to tears because she couldn't believe that somebody that she didn't know had taken the time to make homemade cookies for her. And she had never had anybody do that for her before. So something as small as that. You can be part of our Hotline team, part of the rescue team. You can come to the house and be with the girls. We have jail ministry. We have awareness where you can go and speak in different churches and schools, different community events in order to raise awareness. We have a volunteer training coming up in 2 weeks, so October 21st and 22nd, and then that'll give you a lot of the training that you need in order to do those things.
So I'm with Rescuing Hope, and I'm going to echo her on the Out of Darkness training. It is fantastic, and you should go no matter what. You'll learn so much. But with Rescuing Hope, we really covet your prayers, especially now. We're really trying to work on middle school curriculum so we can work on the preventative side of things, and it's kind of a long battle, but it's a good one. So if you could just pray for us in that. And then we also really focus on awareness and education. So if you have, if you're a member of a police department, or if you have a school or a counseling group or whatever, we would love to come speak there. And Susan can train you on that. Also, we have a Circle Atlanta for Hope event every year. It's a prayer event where we literally circle Atlanta in prayer. And we just did our second annual, but it'll come up again in September of next year. So be on the lookout for that one.
For Street Grace, you can go to the website and there are opportunities there. But if you're here at 9:35 on a Sunday night, I think you want to do something. So there's two very significant things that you can do in the next few months. One of them is November 8th, when you go to the ballot and you vote, there's going to be a constitutional amendment on it. It's the Safe Harbor Amendment. It's Constitutional Amendment number 2. So remember Constitutional Amendment number 2. It is an opportunity for the state of Georgia. Just in Atlanta alone, reports are that the sex trafficking industry is a $300 million underground industry. This amendment will allow us to generate $1.5 million to $2 million to give towards restorative care. It is not a tax. It is not something that will come out of your pocket. It is a constitutional amendment that will impose a 1% fee on adult establishments that combine alcohol or have nudity with alcohol. And it will be based off that, and then the fees and fines that are collected from the crimes and people that are convicted in human trafficking. That alone, that event is the most significant thing all of us can do this year. It's an opportunity to generate $2 million, in restorative care. This state does not have dedicated funding to provide care, aftercare for survivors. So that's number one. The second one is in February is our statewide sex trafficking lobby day. You can find information out about that on our site and join with us. We have 700 or 800 people that go down to the Capitol and lobby with us that day, and that's a very big day. Thanks.
So we're with Blue Heart International, and we focus more in Northern California with the dream of being international one day, which is why we threw the international in there. But a couple things you can do is, one, follow everybody on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, because awareness and education is key to ending human trafficking, because we're still surprised to hear, as much as you see things on the news and in the media, well, not so much this month or the last few months because of the election, but you would see things come up. People still don't know that human trafficking happens in the United States, in our own backyards and in our communities, and that our kids are at risk. And so we all put out good information about not just the darkness, but also the hope that we're able to provide for these girls and boys who are coming out of sex trafficking. So follow those, share those, and also prayer. I mean, prayer is the most powerful tool, and all of us can get engaged in that. And don't just pray for the victims. We also need to pray for the pimps and the Johns, that God will heal them and restore their life, so that, I mean, we hear stories all the time of pimps and Johns who are now, because of what they did and because they feel so bad for the things that they did, they've now flip-flopped, and they're now doing the rescuing and going out and trying to fight it. And lastly, we all have some things out there you guys can buy. Sorry, this is my shameful plug. We have shirts and books and stuff. I know they have a great book out there. But our shirts were made by victims of sex trafficking in Cambodia. These were girls that were all rescued, all under the age of 18. And instead of just putting them back into the situation with their mom and dad, they were given a job making 4 times the annual or monthly wage in Cambodia with health insurance and education. And they do a Bible study every single day. So they handmade every one of the shirts that we have out there, and they're signed by the girls on the tag. So take a look at those and all the other stuff that we have out there.
So the movie is available at Amazon.com, Walmart.com, any of the Christian bookstores. You can pick up a copy, share it with a friend, share it with someone of influence in your community, or, especially talk about it with your relatives who are scattered all over the country or all over the world. We made this to get the conversation started. But more, I would like to talk about how we can equip you. So if you go to our website, CageNoMoreMovie.com, then you'll find download PDFs that you can have that tell you, how do I look for trafficking? And there is a free 4-week study guide that's available for any church that wants to do a youth group study. Honestly, it can be done over 4 weeks. It can be done over one night. It's just, let's start the awareness in the churches. And there's another organization that Trafficking Hope has called CARES program, and that's for any church or any organization that's trying to branch out and make new curriculum. This is available for free, and people can take it and they can brand it as their own, and you can decide, I'm just going to do coalition, or I'm just going to do restoration, or you can go the full gamut, and they will walk alongside of you and help you completely for free.
So again, I just want to mention all the cards, pamphlets, their contact information specifically is out there, so you can put a face to the name and so that you can get involved, whichever one you want, Facebook, all of that, and just any of the merchandise out there. Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you for being so open and honest and just helping us understand a lot better what it means, what we're actually looking for. It's been a huge help, and I thank every single one of you. And I just wanted to real quick turn over Dr. Johnson just to kind of close us out for the night.
Let's give them all a hand again, appreciation. We're going to take up a special offering, and I want to encourage you to give. This is definitely a worthy cause, something we'll be talking. We have a school here as well that I'm a director of, so we'll be talking to my teachers and also our students. We're mostly international schools, so we have about 16 countries that attend our school here. So we'll be talking to them about that. But we definitely want to educate, not just about protecting our own children, but protecting all children. We're in a very immoral world, and how many knows the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy? Jesus comes to give life, and we want to not be a pew warmer, but we want to step out and have courage and make a stand and do anything we can to protect our children. Amen? Amen. We're going to pray, and then we're going to take up an offering real quick for them because we want to give. If you'd like to give, I encourage you to do so. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this time tonight. Father, we thank you that not only will we be educated, Father, but Father, I pray that we'll rise up with courage, Father. We'll rise up with boldness, Father. How can we help? How can we make a difference in this world, not this nation, to protect all children, Father? That we can just be on guard that the enemy comes to wipe out their lives, to destroy their dreams and their callings, Father. Just help us, Father, to be encouragement to other people. And we just plead the blood of Jesus over these children, Father. No weapon formed against them shall prosper. And we just speak life into them, that someone come into their life and rescue them and turn what the enemy meant to destroy, turn to life and blessings, and they can have true joy in their life, Father. And once again, we bless these ministries that they'll prosper financially, they'll be strengthened spiritually, Father, and they'll have people just rise up and help them in many ways, Father. Open the doors of blessings, Father, in the name of Jesus.